discussion after that.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for having us today, Nisa. Hi, everyone. My name is Angie Vishyanan. I am the founder of Leg Up Legal. It's a company that provides a mentoring platform to connect pre-law students to lawyers for mentoring so that they can learn more about the legal profession. So I'm very passionate about mentoring myself, and I've benefited from the mentorship of many amazing lawyers. So I'm so excited to be here with you all today to facilitate this discussion with two wonderful mentors that I've come to know over the last year. So I want to introduce to you Richard Amador. And Richard, can you introduce yourself to everyone?
Hi, everybody. I am Richard Amador. I'm in Los Angeles. I'm the managing partner of Sanchez and Amador. I'm an employment defense and business trial lawyer, and my team primarily represents Fortune 500 companies in employment litigation. I'm also one of the founders of something called the NELC Academy, the National Employment Law Council. So it's for junior employment defense lawyers to teach them advanced skills and plug them into a national network. And I've been helping to run that program for almost a dozen years.
Awesome. And I'd also like to welcome May Ortiz. May, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. May Ortiz, Managing Counsel at Toyota Motor North America. We are located in Plano, Texas, and I've been personally mentoring since 2006.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us today. So I wanted to kick off our discussion with just broadly, what does mentorship mean to you?
I guess I'll start. So to me, mentorship is on the mentor side is just sharing what you know with folks who can benefit from that knowledge. So it could be anything from careers to finding a job to how to do something like take a deposition or prepare for trial or develop business, start a law firm, whatever it is, whatever the knowledge is that the mentor has that they can pass along to somebody else that could benefit from it. To me, that's mentorship.
Yeah, I think that's the same. I mean, when we look at the actual literal definition, it often comes to advisor or teacher. And I think more importantly, we should consider what that definition does not include.
Oftentimes I hear students ask me, like, why would you even want to be a mentor? So can you tell me a little bit about why you mentor others?
Well, I mean, for me personally, I find it really fulfilling to be helpful. I think a lot of times people are like, what's in it for the mentor? And for me, it fulfills me. It fills me up, fills up my cup. So I can have a bad day, but being able to help someone else makes me feel better. So maybe from a selfish reason, that's what I get out of it. But I think from a mentee perspective, like, why would you want a mentor? Well, why wouldn't you want to learn from someone who might have already done it before? You can figure it out yourself for sure, right? Like everyone can succeed and figure things out, but why make it harder on yourself by doing it alone when you don't have
to? Absolutely. It's funny. I've been practicing law for more than 30 years. And for the first 20 of those years, I was a very occasional mentor. And I would hear from people who were mentors, and they would say this thing that to me sounded like nonsense, which is, as a mentor, I get way more out of it than the people that I'm mentoring. Yeah. And that just sounded like nonsense to me. It's like, how could that possibly be? You're passing along all this wisdom to somebody who doesn't know. And lo and behold, it's true. Yeah. Now that I literally mentor scores of young lawyers all over the country. Some of them not so young anymore because I've been doing it for a dozen years or so. And what I find is that the same sense of fulfillment that I used to get out of doing community service work and pro bono work and voter registration work and other things like that, I get out of mentoring because I'm providing value. I'm helping people to succeed. And diversity in the legal profession is really, really important to me. And this is a way that I can have an impact on a day-to-day basis. And so it is enormously fulfilling to see someone that I've invested my time in be successful.
Thank you so much. So now I wanted to ask you, there are times that people throw around these terms that are this, they seem to be interchangeable or overlapping, but we're really not sure. You know, some people say, well, mentors are also sponsors, or you can have a champion, or you could have, and you know, is your mentor necessarily your boss? I think, can you help us figure out, you know, what is a mentor and what is not a mentor?
I'm
Mentor,
interested in hearing
you go,
Richard
May.
go first. I was going
No,
to say
you
you
go, May.
first. It's so funny. And incidentally, like I consider Richard one of my mentors. So that's why I'm just like, what does my mentor think about mentoring? So I think there are distinct differences, right? Like a mentor is a teacher or advisor. But part of that role could be coaching someone very specific on a skill, right? Like coaching someone on business development or coaching someone on how to network. More than just giving the advice, but really showing the how and again, coaching someone through it. I think sponsor is different. I think sponsor is when someone's willing to use their political within an organization or social capital to kind of like, you know, share some of their magic for you and elevate you and say, hey, this is my friend Richard. He's an excellent attorney. You should really hire him. That is what I think sponsorship is. And it's very different because people can want to mentor you and help you without sharing their social capital or without sponsoring you. And something I also notice is that, at least in my experience, I've not been mentoring as long as Richard has, but you don't ask someone to be a sponsor. I mean, you can, but I don't know that that's very successful. More often than not, you might know who your mentors are, but you may not know who your sponsors are because sometimes, or maybe most of the time, they're in a room, people are talking about you. And so you're not in that same room. So that sponsor can help elevate you or give you props or give you visibility in a way that you may never be privy to. And so I'll be honest with you, I have an inkling that I have a sponsor, but I don't know, I'm not sure. I don't know, Richard, I don't know how you feel about it.
So if you get a chance to get the recording of this, play back that piece, because that was all the magic right there. So you shouldn't be asking people, in my view, to be either your mentor or your sponsor. What you should be working on is just trying to develop a relationship. Yes. And then over time, it may turn into mentorship or sponsorship. And I'll disagree with May on one thing, which is that it has to be within your organization to be a sponsor or a champion. I mean, I help people get jobs all the time. I help people get business all the time. And I do it for people that are either friends of mine or that are people that I mentor, that I believe I've come to develop a relationship with this person. They've been intentional about developing a relationship with me. So there's a sense of trust and confidence that this person can do what it is that there is. And so what May is talking about, of those conversations about you when you're not in the room, to me, that's how you succeed in your career. I mean, you could be the best lawyer out there and not be successful because not enough people know it. And so where I've found opportunities over the years, it's because people were talking about me behind my back and saying really wonderful things. And I've helped a ton of people get jobs and they didn't know it until somebody there squealed and let them know. So, you know, but you've got to earn that. You shouldn't just ask for it, because just asking shows that you don't have the emotional maturity to be able to have earned that, in my mind.
Those are great responses. I guess, you know, one of the experiences that I've had in mentoring is sometimes, you know, I'm not sure, I guess, what are the opportunities that my mentee is searching for. So I can't go out and be a champion for them because I just don't know what they're looking for. And then sometimes they volunteer of their own initiative and say, like, I'm looking for this. Can you help me find it? So do you think that's appropriate that they can ask, you know, in some instances? Or like, when do you know how comfortable you are to be able to ask for certain things in a relationship?
I think it's always, if you don't mind, May, let me go first on this one. I think it's always safe to ask for advice. And that is the best thing to do, because you don't ever want to put yourself in a position to make the mentor feel uncomfortable and then disengage. So for example, let's say you know that I represent XYZ Corporation in California, and you want to represent XYZ Corporation in Texas, and you're like, hey, can you introduce me to the lawyer responsible for hiring outside counsel and recommend me to them? Well, maybe based on my dealings with you, I don't think you can handle that work. I don't think you're ready. Or you ask me, hey, can you introduce me to your client so I can get a job with them? I may not think you're ready. So the best thing for you to do is just ask me for advice. And a good mentor is going to give you the best advice they can if you've established a solid relationship with them. And then it's up to you, because maybe you're ready and they just don't know it. But in their mind, they don't know enough to invest their personal capital and their reputation on you. So that way, by just asking for advice, you get the benefit of that advice. But if I feel comfortable, then I'm going to say, you know what, I'm gonna call this person, or I might just do it without telling you. Right? I do that a lot too. And I've had people where LinkedIn is a perfect example, and May is anytime you ever get to hear May talk about being active on LinkedIn, like just drop everything and listen in on that. But so the LinkedIn is an amazing way to connect with people. And there are lots of folks. I generally don't mentor law students. I focus mainly on lawyers. But I've had law students that have engaged with my content on LinkedIn, and then and we're, then we go back and forth in the DMs, and then I'm like, hey, let's set up a call, and we talk, and I'm like introducing them to folks, because very quickly they've established, hey, this person's on the ball, and it's worth it for me to invest some of my personal capital, but I'm volunteering that, they're not asking. Sorry, that was a really long answer.
No, but I mean, that's so important. And I just finished a book. It's called Unapologetically Ambitious by Shelley Archambault. I just literally finished it this weekend. And her take on mentoring is how I felt about it, but didn't quite articulate it. And it's what Richard has articulated. It's best not to ask. I know there might be times where you are going to ask, but it's best not to ask for a mentor. Ask for advice and something specific, not how can I find a job, right? Like it should be more specific than that. The question should be, I'm looking for a job. This is what I'm interested in. I've tried X, Y, Z. Is there anything I'm missing? You want to make it as easy as possible for the mentor to give you advice, right? It's not like I'm Siri and I can download right to you directly all the ways. And I also want to know that you've shown initiative. And then what Shelley talks about is that you just ask for the advice and think, obviously, show gratitude, try it, and then circle back. And she said she adopted so many mentors that way, because when you've shown the mentor that you tried to execute whatever advice they gave, how it worked for you. Maybe it was like, hey, that works so awesome. I'm thinking my next step is this. What do you think? Do you see how easy that is? Like someone instantly wants to help, right? Like, oh, I'll tell you what I think. Or, hey, that didn't quite work out. I wonder, if I failed in execution in here, what do you think? Again, just what do you think? And you just circle back without even saying, will you be my mentor? Without ever saying, can I meet with you once a month for an hour at a time, which can be really scary to a busy attorney who might want to help, but that sounds like a lot of commitment, right? So just take the advice, run with it, but don't forget to follow up. And that's how you establish the relationship, I think.
Yeah, I just want to chime in on this follow-up piece. To me, that's the biggest place where folks drop the ball across the board in business development, in career success, and in mentoring relationships. So you set up a call with me, and I talk to you about what next steps in your career, or whether or not you should apply in-house at this type of a company or that type of company. And then and I give you a half an hour or even an hour of my time, and then I don't hear from you again for 2 years. And
I don't even know how the story turned out. I want to know.
That's dumb. I want to know what happened, right? I've basically invested in you.
Yeah.
I've given you knowledge that's taken me literally decades to accumulate. And you can't do me the courtesy of just saying, I got the job, or, hey, Richard, I took your advice and unfortunately it didn't work out, but now I'm applying to this other company. Let someone who's been generous enough to share their time with you, let them know what happened. It's not that hard. And it doesn't mean you have to have another hour-long conversation. It can be a text or an email or a DM on LinkedIn. But follow up, that's the biggest drop ball, I think, out there for people and lawyers in particular, just in having successful careers.
Yeah, because otherwise I feel like I'm a magic 8-ball, right? Like you just ask me a question, you get something, and then I feel very like it's very transactional. It's the last thing I want to feel, right?
Well, it's not even transactional. It's just like, give me, and then I'm gone.
Yeah,
there's
true,
there's
right.
no transaction. It's I'm taking, and now I'm gone.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest complaint I hear from most mentors is that the mentee, just chimes in, asks, peppers you with 20 questions for 30 minutes or an hour and then disappears into the ether, never to be heard from again. And then you just wonder, wow, did that advice help? Did it not help? Did it work?
Yeah.
Totally.
And then just to offer it from the mentee standpoint, I think I've been a terrible mentee for that very reason. And I'll tell you culturally why. It's because I don't want to bother anybody. And so I feel like I've sucked up enough of your valuable time. You can't possibly care how it turned out for me. And now that I'm a mentor, I'm wrong because I do want to know how the story ends or how it turned out. But as a mentee, that's what kept me from following up.
Totally.
Right.
So I think that kind of naturally leads into the next question. There is a question in the chat box, but I think this one naturally follows. So what makes a good mentee? What are other things that you would do to be a good mentee?
Ooh, I got a long list, but let me give you the highlights. No. So number one is follow up. Number two is make it as easy as possible for the mentor. So for example, let's say we set up a call and it's just going to be a phone call. It's not a Zoom or anything else, just a phone call. Send me a calendar invite with your phone number in the local. I use Outlook, so this is what I'm used to, but send me a calendar invite with your phone number in the location line, right? So instead of a street address, you're putting the phone number. That way, when it's time for the call, all I got to do is click that link and I'm dialing you. I don't have to look anything up. I don't have to dial. I don't have to cut and paste. It's just click and I'm on the phone. Same thing with Zoom, right? Send me a Zoom link, but don't send me a separate passcode. It's like, the Russians aren't going to hack into our Zoom call. So just send me a simple one-click Zoom link or WebEx link or whatever it is. So right there, I just click on it and it's easy peasy. I don't have to be frustrated with anything. If you need to cancel, it happens, right? You get deadlines, you get partners, life gets in the way. If you need to cancel, give me as much possible notice. And then don't just say, hopefully we can reschedule. Say something like, I'll email you tomorrow and with some possible dates where we can do this. But just think, how do I make this as easy as possible for the mentor, especially if it's somebody that is super busy, like May. I'm convinced there's 5 Mays out there in the world somewhere. Somehow she got access to some secret Toyota lab and cloned herself.
Oh my gosh, you're so fun. I miss you so much. It's so good to see your face. So I definitely echo all of that and just kind of put a fine exclamation narrative to make it as easy as possible. This was back when, pre-COVID, and I actually had live meetings with mentors from time to time if I could. And one of my mentees knew that, I was a new mom. And she was like, I know it's hard, bring your infant to brunch if you want, invite the whole family. Like she knew how important it was for me to be a mom and a lawyer and a mentor. And she literally would come to brunch with my family and we would just have a conversation. I mean, that's an example of how she made it so easy that, number one, I don't want to say no, but how could I? Because it was so easy. I mean, and I live, in the burbs now and I'm an hour away and she's like, I'll come to you. Right. I mean, pre-COVID. So again, I think something that's really made a couple of mentees in my life stand out is that in the very call, there's a showing of, I care about you too. Right? Like they know that I have kids, like, how are your kids or how are you doing? Or what are you working on? Or, and then if it's something that they know, like I literally had in my first 30-minute session with someone that wanted to be my mentee, she suggested a professional development book. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love that. Like already suggesting something that I could also take away. And look, and sometimes as mentees, you may feel like you don't have anything necessarily to give back, but beyond gratitude, you know, sometimes a shout on LinkedIn, sometimes visibility, sometimes, I mean, those little things, we're human beings too, right? So I think thinking of it as a relationship, to Richard's point.
And I think that, you know, that's one of the most, that's how you elevate from being one of 10 or 20 or 50, however many mentees the mentor has. That's how you elevate yourself to be someone that they're going to champion or sponsor, by making it reciprocal. And so just for example, one of the lawyers that I mentor, we talk fairly regularly every month or so. And you know how you can see on LinkedIn, if people haven't changed their settings, you can see who's looked you up, right? She pulls up my profile on LinkedIn like twice a month. And I see temporally why she's doing that, because she's looking for my posts so she can comment on them and like them. That's just amazing, right? She never told me she was going to do it. She never asked me if she could do it. She just does it. And at first I was like, why does she keep looking at my thing? And I'm like, duh, well, you know, the same day she looks me up, there's all these comments and likes from her on my posts on LinkedIn. So she's helping me to get a higher profile of the messages that I'm sending out on LinkedIn about diversity in law and mentoring and career success. So she's helping me achieve my objectives. And so that's one thing, is try to, like May said, try to figure out how I can help you. But what I don't want to hear, and actually it just feels weird, is, you know, we have a half an hour call, and at the end of the call, the mentee is basically saying, so Richard, how can I help you? It's like, no idea. I don't know, you know, and it's a weird ask, right? It just, you should, if it's a relationship, you figure those things out as you go, what's important to them. And a lot of us are active on LinkedIn. That's an easy way to give back, is just to help promote the message of this person. And then, you know, what are the things that are important to them? And so if somebody, you know, helped you get a job and you see that they are raising money for some nonprofit, you know, put up some cash, you know, donate money, get a tax deduction, donate some money to that nonprofit. There have been people that have helped me, and I see that they're raising money for something, I'm writing a check, just because that's a way that I can give back to them. That's something they care about. I'm not giving to them, but it's something that I care about. And then lastly, I mean, I think your goal, if you have someone that's a mentor that you think is just amazing, your goal should be, how do I earn this person's friendship? You don't ask somebody to be your friend. You just earn their friendship over time, building the relationship. And I'll tell you, this is another point that I have a vehement disagreement with May on. I am not her mentor. She is my friend.
Both. It can be both.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with all those things. One of the most amazing things that I've seen some of my mentees do is to volunteer to help my other mentees. Like, they'll actually ask me, like, hey, if you have any other mentees that I could help, like if you want to pass them my way, I'm like, oh yeah, I'd love for you to be able to learn from each other, you know, teach them some of the things I've taught you, Jesus. You know, like, yeah, I mean, I think it's great if you can see your mentees helping each other out. And those introductions are easy, right? Because you know they're going to learn from each other, and you know that they're both interested in learning. And so I think, yeah, figure out what is important to your mentors and really support them in whatever way you can. You know, no matter what stage of life you're in, whether you're a student, whether you're a young lawyer, you know, whatever stage that you're at, you can always offer, you know, support, you know, one of the things that, you know, Richard was saying about LinkedIn, one of my mentees, she calls it like bombing. She'll just go and like my last like 15 posts or whatever, just like the day that we're supposed to meet or something. And she's like, yeah, you know, I just go and like see all the things that you're doing and try to support you in whatever way I can. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I think it just shows that they have an interest in you as a human being. And that's really important. I mean, you've got to like your mentees. Your mentees have to like you. Like if you don't like each other as people, it's not going to go very far. So, but yeah, So one of the questions in the chat was, do you have any advice on how to build relationships with especially senior lawyers that seem unapproachable?
Well, as a senior lawyer who often seems unapproachable, you know, I think one of the key things is just figure out what people are interested in. This one lawyer that I chat with regularly, she's like a, I don't know, third, fourth year associate at a regional law firm, and she wanted to develop a relationship with her firm chairman, who is, you know, she's a young person of color. He's this old country club white guy, and she's like, we don't have anything in common. And I'm like, well, how do you know that? You know, ask him about his kids. Everybody wants to talk about their kids. So ask him about his kids. And maybe you'll find out that, you know, they went to the same college you did, or that you both love skiing, or, you know, hiking, or the same kind of dog, or whatever it is. And so the chairman actually was very gracious and offered to have like monthly meetings with her. And so I said, make sure at the beginning of every one of those calls, before you get to business, you're just asking about him, ask about his wife, ask about the vacation he said he was going to go on, ask about, you know, his personal life. And, you know, it's a failing of human nature that we all love talking about ourselves. And the older we get, the more we love talking about ourselves. I can tell you that with absolute certainty. And so, you know, ask people about themselves, and you'll find out that somewhere in there you have some things in common, and that gives you something to talk about. And then again, you know, this goes back to some of the things we talked about earlier, is just be respectful of their time. Come in there with specific things to discuss. What you don't want to have is just kind of meandering conversation with awkward silences. One of the mentoring relationships I have, a young lawyer on the East Coast at a very large law firm, and we talk maybe every 3 or 4 months. And he'll shoot me an email and says, Richard, are you available sometime in the next 2 weeks? Let me know. And so I'll give him like 2 or 3 options. He'll pick one. He automatically sends me the calendar invite. We get on the phone, and he like chit chats with me for about a minute and a half, and then he's down to business. He's like, okay, so Richard, here's my big issue. And he tells me, and then I start peppering him with questions, and so that we can get on focused. And then he's like, okay, so, and then what about this? And then I can tell he's looking at notes. He has like 3 or 4 really important questions that he wants to get my insight on. So it's like, it's almost like a business meeting once we get down to business, but I appreciate it because I feel like I'm packing a 3-hour seminar into a 45-minute call, because he's so efficient with knowing what he doesn't know and knowing what he wants to know, and having really thought through the questions so that he can maximize the impact of my time. And so it is a little bit like a business meeting, but I appreciate it because I feel like I'm able to provide a lot of value in a very short period of time.
Yeah, a couple of kind of stories to again, just kind of put an exclamation mark to what Richard, all the wisdom that he's dropping. I remember I was part of a formal mentoring program at my law firm, and I was paired with the old white country club guy, and went to lunch and just kind of asked, you know, questions or whatever. During the call, he got a call from his wife, and his wife reminded him to pick up milk or something so domestic, like on the way home. Don't forget the milk on the way home, honey, or something. And I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but it was like right during our lunch, and it wasn't like he told me to step away or he stepped away or whatever, right? And then so after the lunch or whatever, you know, I asked these questions like, you know, what do you think it makes a good associate? You know, normal questions. And then at the end, as I was leaving his office, I said, oh, by the way, I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but don't forget to pick up milk because that's what your wife, you know, said. And he was like, oh, I got to write that down. And he said, May, if you keep doing that, you will be fine here. And so that's the human part of it, right? Like, being helpful. How can I be helpful? Making sure he doesn't get in trouble for not bringing milk home, right? That's like a little tiny example, but that's what I mean. Like, how can you be helpful? The second thing is like, I also want to share a mentee's perspective that I wasn't very strategic. I remember the first times where I was able to meet with the CFO of my company, and I was like, duh, I didn't realize that it was like a free mentoring section without me having to ask for it. Like, we were talking about business, but afterwards she was like, oh, oh, so how can I help you? And I was like totally off guard. I hadn't thought about it. I was just thinking it was business only. And I was like, I'm losing this amazing opportunity. So try to be more strategic than May is at times, because I was so business focused and I was caught off guard. And I was kind of like, and of course I went to like something like, oh, well, you've been here at a long time, what do you love about our company? Just to give me time to think about something I really want to ask, but don't miss those opportunities, because even if it's business, there is always an opportunity to ask for advice and start building that relationship and feel if the person's open to it.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on an important thing that both of you guys talked about is these structured mentoring programs. I think we've all had to participate in structured mentoring programs, and we probably, all had to be either mentors or mentees. So what are some of the things in these structured programs that you see work, and what are the things that don't work?
You've probably done more of them than I have, May, so you go ahead.
I know, and it's hard for me to find something that works. I guess what works. Is that terrible? I got to be really candid with y'all. I think what does work is that it forces you to be visible to people that maybe you normally wouldn't, right? So had I not been paired with the example, he might not have known who I was. And that could be a disservice to me, right? Because part of it is you want people to know who you are within the firm and your caliber of work. So I think if anything, it forces people to get to at least put a face with a name. I think it's well-intentioned, right? I think the firm then who has the program recognizes that mentoring is important. But more often than not, perhaps I've seen it not work, because that maybe the mentor's forced to get involved. If they want to be on the law firm committee, well, you've got to be a mentor. It has to, and so there's not that genuine wanting to help people. I don't really want to go on and on about how it doesn't work, but I think you can try to make it work for you. I think that's the takeaway. Take it for what it is. If you get a feel for the person not really being interested, try to make it as easy as possible. Try to be as helpful as possible so then they do have an interest in you. But I don't know that I'm a person that advocates forcing it.
Well, maybe let's go about it in a different way. If somebody were designing a mentoring program at their firm or their institution or wherever they're at, what are some tips that you have for things that you've seen that go well that might help it along?
For a relationship that's not as organic, having guidelines, or hey, in the first month, talk about this, and then the second month, talk about that. And I'm saying it in a very I'm trying to be I don't mean to be very flippant about it, but if the ask is how to make a formal program work, have specific guidelines. Like, we would like you to meet at least once a month, whether in person or via phone, and address and talk about these things, so that at least there's a baseline of expectation of what you need to talk about and hopefully what the mentee gets out of it.
Yeah, and I agree with that. The challenge is, especially if you have people that aren't really that interested in being in the mentoring program as mentors, then they're going to ignore that agenda, that schedule, etc. And so I guess I would say, and this is hard when you're a young lawyer because you're insecure, you feel like I don't belong, you feel like, what do I have, and I'm going to look like an idiot, so I don't know what to do, I don't want to waste this person's time. But just be a lawyer, be your own lawyer for a minute, and say, okay, my client is me, I have this person who's got juice in some way in the law firm, right? They're a senior associate, they're a partner, they're a rainmaker, they're a trial lawyer, whatever it is, they're on the management committee, they have specialized expertise in something that I want to know about, but I've never done, right? So go in there and take the freaking deposition. If at a minimum, just come up with some really good questions of things that you don't know about and ask your questions. So obviously you want to try and develop a relationship. You want to try and have a connection. You want them to be invested in you and your success. But at a bare minimum, as an advocate for yourself as a client, you've gone in there and you've gotten information about 3 things that you didn't know about before you had that meeting or that phone call.
Awesome. Yeah, and when we were designing our mentoring program, I had to look into a lot of examples of other mentoring programs, and I thought back to all the ones that I had participated in, and many of the firms that I had joined had their own, structured mentoring programs, and I thought back like, what does help work? And I think, when you do help set the expectations with that structure, that's super important. Exactly what you said, May, is that, if you're facilitating a mentoring program, what you can help with is to like create structure so that it takes away that awkwardness. And, I think a lot of mentoring programs that fail are the ones that only focus on the match. They only focus on trying to pair people, but they don't really focus on any of the follow-up objectives or anything like that. So it really does help to provide them even just examples of things to work on, like, hey, you guys don't have to work on this if there's other objectives that you have in mind, but if you have no idea where to start, here's a starting point, right?
Yeah. And my suggestion also is I know the ones that I'm involved in were always like a year long, and then you switch, make it shorter. Make it shorter if it's going to be formal and people might not really be in it to be in it, maybe 6
Yeah.
months and switch.
And the other thing I'd say, and this actually was what I was leading up to, and then I lost my point because I'm old, is I would say provide coaching to the mentees on how to develop that relationship and be available have someone that's available to them to coach them. I had my first meeting. It was super awkward, and I didn't know what to say, and he didn't know what to say, and like we went through the questions that you gave us, and we were done in 5 minutes, and so there were kind of awkward silences, and then we just went ahead and ended it. He said he had a meeting, so we just ended it. So coach that person through. Okay, try this next time to try and get that going. I'd say that's a big issue. And going back to May's point of when she had this meeting with the CFO, I had something very similar when I was a young lawyer. I was doing some work with a nonprofit, and this guy there, as a favor to me, got me a meeting with the CEO of a very large regional bank. And so I met him at this private club that I still could never afford. And I came in totally unprepared, and it was just like a completely wasted opportunity. And I could just feel him thinking, why the hell did my guy set me up with this dumb kid? Right. And so what I don't want you to think is that we were all, ideal mentees, that we all had it all figured out when we were first year lawyers or anything like that. I was bumbling and fumbling around, and I'm sure everything that I get ticked off at people for doing this wrong or not doing that, I'm sure I did all of it. So, it's a growing process, and the important thing, as in all things as a professional, is just always look to get better.
Yeah, I think that brings up a good point, though, is that, once you go through this process yourself, when you mentor others, you'll learn those things. You'll be like, oh man, these are some things that my mentees do that tick me off, and I'll make sure not to do that to my own mentor. So that's good. What do you love most about your favorite mentor? May, what do you love about Richard?
Oh my gosh, I'll tell you. Let me tell this first story. When I met Richard, I met him through this formal program that he also helped found and does. And it's this kind of for new in-house employment lawyers, an academy type thing where you kind of learn these soft skills and things like that. And I remember meeting him through that. And of course, it's like, okay, he's another professional running through this. But I remember after taking a photo, he kind of pulls me inside and he was like, May, I know we just met, and I know this might land the wrong way, but when you took your picture and you kind of had your arms crossed, it seems like very unapproachable. And when you want to think about executive presence, and I'll be honest with you, at first I was like, sir, I don't even know you, okay? but I mean, he came about it, and then he followed up with this like article about executive presence, and I was like, oh, wow, this is someone who is trying to help me, that there's nothing he'll get out of it. There's no, he just wants to be helpful. And so I think that's one of my favorite things about Richard, that he really genuinely wants to be helpful. And
sometimes he's a little overeager and steps on himself. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but I needed that. Like, who else would tell me? No one, right? I mean, it's kind of like that, like you're in a group and then like you have something in your teeth and nobody tells you. Like you need someone to be like, hey, you need to work on this, or, you know, someone who cares enough to think about you first. And so that's one of my favorite things about Richard, his candor.
You know, as soon as I did that, I was like, "Oh man, I'm sure I offended her." And turns out I did. So thanks for finally letting me know after 5 years.
Well, she's still talking to you today, so
yeah, I was like, oh my gosh.
Amazing. Yeah, but so it's interesting. The my favorite mentor is someone that May knows pretty well. And she started out as my mentee. So the other program, so there's this one for in-house counsel that May was a part of several years ago, and then with this academy that we talked about earlier started up almost a dozen years ago. And in the very first program was this young lawyer named Carolyn Lamb, and Carolyn just like really stood out because she asked great questions and she was afraid of nothing. Well, she was afraid of all kinds of things, but she wasn't afraid to say it and just, you know, put it out there. And she was out there connecting with people and introducing people. And just, I just thought she was amazing. And she taught me so much about being a good mentor that she became my mentor. And now we're just like really dear friends. But she mentored me on being a good mentor. And probably the biggest like brain explosion that she gave me out of many was that help people figure out what success means to them rather than trying to shoehorn your definition of success onto them. And
so powerful.
That was a real challenge for me when I first got started. I was like, okay, here's the best path, right? And it's like, no, there is no one best path. And sometimes there's a crappy path that you can turn into an amazing path. And so it's all about, you know, maximizing opportunity and maximizing relationships and feeling good about what you're doing. And so she really taught me how to be a mentor. And I'm forever grateful to her for that.
Yeah. And if I could just share a little bit about that, I think, you know, when I've talked to people who maybe have mentors and they're like, oh, I'll never mentor again. And I'm like, oh, why? They're like, oh, I get invested and they don't do what I say and it just breaks my heart. And I'm like, whoa, time out. The purpose of a mentor is to share experiences and provide options and say, have you thought about this? Or have you thought about that? I think I learned early on that it's not, you should do X in this. Absolutely. Like, you know, like maybe if I were you, I would do X, but there's a lot of options. And I think that's something that I would love for mentors to get, that we are not mentors by saying, this is the way to go, Richard, you know, to your point, this is the way I've gone. This is where I've been. This is where I've learned from where I've been. The landscape looks a little bit different now, but let's talk through some options that you have now. You know, in other words, open up the possibilities versus limiting to a one path.
Yeah. I think as a mentor, if you find yourself saying you should,
yes,
you need to check yourself.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, that's something that I did when I first started mentoring, was telling people you should do this and you should do that. And what I've shifted is more to what May's talking about is, have you considered this? And here's what I might do in that situation, or here's what I saw someone else do that was successful. So you're giving them with options. And I'll tell you, as a mentor, my favorite thing to hear, other than just thank you, is nobody ever told me that before. And so going to May's point about me rudely telling her to not cross her arms and stand with a ginormous bag in front of her for a picture, it was like the size of a giant poster board. It is that I'm straight with people, and some people, you know, get offended. Thankfully for me, May was not offended, but I'm always going to be straight, and I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what I think you need to hear. And I think most people realize that I'm coming from a place of wanting to be helpful and not judging them, but some people don't. And so, you know, that's not the right person for me to mentor if you're going to be offended or take it personally every time I give you feedback. But if you're, and I'm very much, I love hearing constructive criticism. I think that's how you get better. It's how you get better at everything. That's, and, you know, everything I do, I can be better at. And no matter how good I am, I can still be better at it. And so I love hearing constructive criticism. I've got a couple of people that I talk to that are on this Zoom call, and I'm going to be reaching out to them afterwards saying, hey, what could I have done better? And you know, what should I have said? What should I have not have said? And I'm sure May's bag will be one of them. But anyway.
This is where we go.
Those are great pieces of advice. I think, yeah, the difference between, you know, a mentor and a coach is really a mentor will give you lots of options. They'll give you ideas. They'll really open up your paths. A coach might drive you to actually take a certain action and get there. And sometimes mentors can be coaches, and sometimes coaches can be mentors. But really, a mentor should give you a lot of options, right? If people are trying to identify mentors in their life, but they haven't found a mentor yet, how do you go about finding a mentor?
May?
Gosh, I mean, I just did a little YouTube video about this. Number one, to kind of quote my favorite Peloton instructor, Cody, like, it's not that deep, boo, right? Like, there are mentors everywhere, like whether it's at your firm or your organization. I always suggest having one outside as well, whether it is through a bar association or through LinkedIn. I think mentors are out there. I think what's actually the harder question is what's your why? What are you looking for? What are you needing? What type of guidance are you looking for? And then you find that mentor, right? Like, is it someone who is more of a person who's going to help you perfect your craft or your art? Like, I really need someone to help me make my writing better, you know, maybe coach me through writing, or maybe give me tips on how to be a better, you know, business developer. Or do I want someone more of like a sounding board? Like, should I go in-house or not, right? One of those proverbial forks in the roads or type question. I think it goes down to your why, and then thinking about who has that unique experience to fill it, because not everyone has, right? Like, if you're thinking about going in-house, I don't know that I would talk to a professor, even though a professor might be a great mentor for something else. I'm generalizing here, but
yeah. Richard?
Yeah, and I would just add to that, it is look for people who express interest in your success. And so I've seen so many times where I've been in the conversation where someone, really accomplished lawyer, is talking to some young lawyer, and they have a nice conversation, and the senior lawyer says, you know what, shoot me an email, let's set up a call. Yeah. And they never do it. It just, you know, if this person has expressed interest, follow up, for crying out loud. And, you know, as busy as you might be as a junior associate, chances are you're not as busy as that more senior lawyer. And, you know, of all the young lawyers I know, there's only one that I know of that is busier than I am. And oh my God, poor thing is dying. But you know, other than that, I don't know anybody who's busier than I am, of the young lawyers that I talk to. And so if I can find the time to talk to you, you could find the time to just send me an email saying, hey, you know, can we set up a call? And so I see that a lot of this lack of follow-up. And it could be, you're not at a conference, you're on LinkedIn, and you've commented and they're commenting back and they offer. Well, follow up, and then it goes back to making it easy for them to maintain that conversation. But you know, potential mentors are out there everywhere. It's on you as the person who's looking for that relationship to follow up to make it happen. And some people offer and they don't really mean it, right? It happens. But if you followed up a couple of times and they've blown you off, then okay, you let it go. But you want to at least try a couple of times, because it could be that you sent me the email and that day I got inundated with a gazillion emails and then a fire drill and then something happened at home. And so your email just got lost in the shuffle. And that happens. I've had that happen before. And then, you know, 6 months later, I'm going through and, oh, there's that email. Gee, did I ever follow up? Oh, I guess I didn't. And I feel bad, but I'm not going to follow up now. If you followed up a second time, that's much more likely to have resulted in something, in a connection.
How many mentors should you have in your life at any given time?
As many as you need, I think. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, and I mean, I have some people that I talk to once a week for a fairly concentrated period of time. I have some people that I talk to once a month on a regular basis. I have some people that I talk to once a quarter on a regular basis. I have some people that I talk to, it might be, you know, now and then 2 or 3 months from now, and then a year from now, and then another year from then. And those are all workable, great relationships. And so, you know, if that's the variety of my schedule as a mentor, then as a mentee, you can have the same type of variety, and you can have one, you can have 20 mentors. Just depends on what your needs are.
Yeah, it goes back again, you know, to what your needs are, what's your why, and also don't be afraid to let go of a relationship if it doesn't work for either of you anymore, right? It's not a marriage. It's not a monogamous type. Some people feel like, oh, I can't have another mentor. I can only have one and I have to be really loyal to this one and I can't have another one. It's not like that, right? Like if you're giving advice and people are invested in your success, to Richard's point, however many you need, but if it doesn't work for you anymore, hopefully there's still a relationship where you can just be friends, right? Maybe it's not an advice, but at least hopefully you're friends. I mean, that's the ideal situation.
Yeah, and sometimes maybe, you know, one mentor may be better to give you advice on a certain aspect than another mentor. I mean, I tell my mentees all the time, let me introduce you to some other people. Like, you know, these folks might have better advice for you. You know, I don't feel like they're cheating on me if they go and talk to other mentors. I'm like, please go.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, go talk to people. That's very helpful. So can you tell me, do you recommend having mentors outside of the legal industry too? Should you only have mentors for your career or for other aspects of your life?
I think you definitely can. But going back to May's question of what's your why, right? So if you want to leave the legal industry, then you should definitely have mentors outside of your industry. If, let's say, you want to develop business and the people you want to develop business from are business owners or are CFOs or, you know, whatever it is, then you should have mentors that are in those positions so that they can tell you this is what we look for, and hey, let me introduce you to some of my friends, right? So I think it depends on that why question. I mean, you being a working parent or caregiver of, you know, you could be caring, not you could be caring for your child, but you could also be caring for a parent or other family member, and let's say they're struggling with some disease that you're, you know, you could have a mentor who's an experienced caregiver in dealing with family members who have that disease or navigating the hospital system or whatever it is. So I think it goes back to that why question, and then you figure out what you need, and then okay, who knows this world way better than I do, so that I can seek their advice.
That's right. I mean, just a personal narrative. When I came to Toyota, I learned quickly on that this is such a big company. I need to talk and learn from people who've been in this company a long time to understand the culture, to understand the business why. And so, and not necessarily within legal, right? Just someone who knows the business. You know, the CFO is someone that I've, you know, had the occasion to have, you know, 2 or 3 conversations with, and that's amazing. She's not a lawyer, right? But, you know, we've been able to bond over the fact that, you know, she was a working mom, right? Like one busy executive is just like another busy executive, you know, those same kind of, you know, Richard, to your point, you know, trying to balance that work-life integration, those type questions, you know, so it's right. It comes to your why, but I think it behooves you to get different perspective, right? I mean, if you ever have an inkling that maybe the law is not the universe that you want to be in, you should probably talk to someone who's not in it to see if the grass is greener, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So over, you know, the course of time of all the mentoring relationships that you've had, and all the things that you've learned about being a mentor, what's your advice for other mentors? You know, what are some things that you would impart on them to say, you know, hey, I wish I had done these things early on in my mentoring relationships to help make it easier, better, or help provide more value to my mentees?
Number one would be what we talked about earlier: is don't tell people what they should do. That's a big one that I had to learn, is don't tell people what they should do. And the second is that don't reduce your expectations of how it should work, and just look to provide value. And if it's not making you feel good, then don't do it. Because there are plenty of other folks out there that you can feel good about developing relationships with. I had one person that I was mentoring, and we, this is someone, it was a second career lawyer. So she was different than your typical straight through law school. She had another career. She was successful in that career, and then became a lawyer, and I became her mentor. But then that quickly, because of her experience and maturity level, it matured into a friendship. But then she kept ghosting me. And it's like, I get personally invested and then we have a call set up and she blows me off, and then we have another call set up, she blows me off, and like I'm texting her, hey, what's going on, and nothing for like a month and a half, and then she resurfaces. I don't know, after like 8 months of that, I just gave up, and it's like, I'm done. And so to me, that was painful to do, because this is somebody I genuinely cared about. But it's like, I don't have the emotional space to be chasing you down. Either we're friends or we're not friends, and if we're just occasional people, then I can't go back to that, because this matured into a friendship, and I can't do that. So to me, it's just, if it doesn't work for you, then move on both sides.
Yeah, like one of my stories about being a mentor is like also set expectations, which is kind of hard. And maybe this is really for, well, I don't know. Regardless if it's like through a formal program, through a bar association, or it's organic, I do like to, and Richard, you may disagree with me a little bit, but if I don't have a relationship already, and it's like a cold like reach out on LinkedIn or whatever, I do want to know, like, how do you think I can help you? Because I want to frame what you think I can give to you. And this is the story. I remember I was a mentor in a formal bar association program, and I didn't realize that the mentee completely had the 100% expectation that I would find her a job in Dallas. And I didn't know this was her expectation. We never talked about what the expectation was until she kind of sent me email kind of saying, hey, I'm leaving Dallas. No thanks to you, because I don't have a job. It was just kind of like, whoa. And it still made me feel bad, because I know as a mentor, and maybe as practicing lawyers, we're like, how could that have been a reasonable expectation? But when you think as a law student, you don't, unless you've come to a program, no one's told you what a mentor's role is and what a mentor's role is not. So perhaps from her perspective, it was absolutely reasonable for her to think that I would help her find a job, and it made me feel terrible, and a little bit shy to be a mentor. But I think, again, it's like what the relationship is, like, what can I help you with? And if it's like, I really want you to share with me, May, how you think how I can make partner at a law firm. I'm going to be first to show you. I left the year I was up. I didn't make it, right? I didn't know what it's like to make it to be a partner at a law firm. And I don't know what being a partner means. Maybe I can connect you with someone else who's a better fit, like Richard.
I'm smiling because I know several of the partners at that law firm, and May was definitely going to make partner at that law firm. May was definitely going to make partner at that law firm. And so, but yeah, I am neither as nice nor as organized as May is. So I wouldn't have felt bad. I would have said, well, then, forget you to this person. And I'm not as organized. So I don't set expectations. But if it's a brand new thing, I always just start with a question, which is, how can I help? And hopefully they have thought through it enough to know the answer to that question and have a specific ask. I want to move to California and practice law there. I'm in whatever state, what should I do? Or I'm thinking about going in-house. What should I consider? And, just kind of if I could, because we're getting close to the end of the clock here, but I just want to have a brief commercial interruption for 3 things. Number 1 is the maybe. So if you think like I do that just about everything that comes out of May's mouth when it comes to mentoring is pure magic, then you have to check out her blog, The Maybe. It's the, and then May, MEYBE, and like maybe, except with the E in the middle instead of the A. And just amazing stuff, very vulnerable, very real, very, hey, this was my experience, here's how I messed this up, here's how you can do better, here's something I learned by going through this difficult challenge, you can do better. The second one is your site, Leg Up Legal, Angie. If you want to be a mentor and you don't know how to get started, and I get that question a lot, right? I'm like, go to Leg Up Legal, because they make it easy. There's an app, and it's structured. And so if you don't know what to do, it'll give you step by step. Here's how you go about being a mentor, or here's how you go about being a mentee. And then lastly, Nisa's website, and her program, Mentor-in-Law, and both of those, Leg Up Legal and Mentor-in-Law, just to me, they're genius. I saw their stuff on LinkedIn and I immediately wanted to get to know them, because I think they're just amazing and doing really amazing creative stuff. And the one of the many unique things about Mentor-in-Law, Nisa's site, is that it's just got so many resources if you want to figure out how mentoring works, and how to be a great mentor, how to be a great mentee, how to be successful in your career, etc. There's just a ton. It's like Encyclopedia Britannica. It's like Google of mentoring is right there on Nisa's website, Mentor-in-Law. But I apologize for the brief commercial interruption.
Well, we ought to add your blog too, Richard, Color of Law. We've got to add your blog. So we got to put that in the chat.
Thank you.
I was going to say that too. Definitely follow Richard's blog. I think that was a pretty good wrap up, Nisa. So you let us know if you have any parting thoughts for them.
No, that was amazing. Thank you to all of you. My heartfelt, gratitude to all of you for sharing your time, your wisdom, your insight. As somebody who's been both a mentor and a mentee, like, I can attest to everything that was said here. I think I have a crick in my neck from like nodding in agreement the entire time. So thank you so much to all of you. May, Richard, Angie, you guys just were phenomenal. Thank you to all of you who joined us today and engaged with us with your questions, either beforehand or during the discussion. And I'm sorry if we didn't get to all of the questions, but please feel free to reach